I think every single one of us has different, unique, and specific needs, wants, and desires. And I believe that we each have a right and a responsibility to know what those are so that we can clearly communicate in an empowered way to other human beings who might engage with us in a sexual manner so that they can decide whether or not they are interested in playing with us in that way.
This is just a quick warning that we will be talking about sexuality today, and there might be some topics that might not be appropriate for some audiences. Hi, everybody. I am Sandy Weiner. Welcome back to Last First Date Radio, where we believe it is never too late to go on your last first date. And to support you, I've written 3 books. My last book was published in September of 2024. It's called Love at Last, True Stories of Falling in Love Later in Life. Whether you're single or in a relationship, these 18 stories are inspirational and they're all true. Some of them are clients, some are podcast guests, some are people I've never met before who all have amazing stories of finding love later in life. All of my books are available on Amazon for Kindle, paperback, and Audible. Before I bring my guest on, I want to invite you to join my Facebook group if you're not yet a member. This is a safe and sane group for people over 40, women over 40, who want to get true support for finding love. Join us at your last first date. And now for my guest, Lauren Elise Rogers. She is a certified holistic sexuality educator and embodied intimacy coach and relationship coach. Her holistic and embodied approach is deeply rooted in her own journey from pain to purpose. She brings an empathic and non-judgmental approach to her work, and she offers practical tools that empower her clients to take ownership of their pleasure and grow in confidence and connection. She invites individuals and couples to navigate complex topics like long-term partnerships, consensual non-monogamy, life transitions, purity culture, and LGBTQIA plus issues. Welcome to the show, Lauren.
Thank you for having me.
We had such a great conversation before the podcast started that it felt like we were just going to talk for 3 hours. So here we go. I would love for you to share your story about what inspired you to do the work that you do today.
And that's the story we almost talked about off air. So I'm glad we clicked record. Yes, I found my way to this work, as I'm sure so many have, through my own personal story and experience. So I was raised in a high control religious space. I was married at 21 as a virgin on my wedding night. No experience in the romance dating realm at all. I had been raised up in the courtship model. I mean, seriously, little to no understanding of who I was, who I wanted to be with, what I brought to partnership or relationship, anything like that. And days after I was married, my mother died of pancreatic cancer, and it triggered my then husband, who then began a very deep spiral into alcoholism and so many other things. And we had a 10-year-long marriage that had abuse and parasomnias and alcoholism and rehab, and there the birth of my beautiful daughter, and like so many know who are a part of your audience, highs and lows and everything in between. Then someone started having dreams about me and pulled me aside one day and said, "Lauren, how are you?" And I was like, fine. She said, "No, really, how are you?" And I sat down on a park bench and told her the whole story, told her what was really going on behind the scenes, and got into counseling. And within 1 week, my sweet counselor, God bless her, said, "How about we put up a few boundaries and see if your now ex-husband can hold to them?" Sure enough, within that first week, he had kind of blown through them all. And we began the process of dismantling our relationship. But as that happened, I realized how little I knew myself, how little I understood who I was as a sexual being, how little I understood what made for healthy relationships. I had never heard of so many things that I was learning about for the first time. And so folks started saying, Lauren, you look a lot healthier. What's going on? And so I started sharing the little bits that I was learning, but something inside of me said, I know only my lived experience, and it could start to become harmful if I started sharing stories and tips and tricks that are mine. That's what helped me. We were saying off air too, that there's no cookie cutter approach to any type of relationship solving. And so I started wondering if there was any type of educational program out there for holistic sexuality education. And I literally Googled it and up popped my program that I ended up going to school for. And at the time, I was running a nonprofit organization that was focused on maternal health. And so I thought, oh, it makes sense to go back to school for sexual health. I will put that into my programming. It'll be fine. But about 6 months into school, I thought I need to start a business that focuses on this, because I'm learning that if I had known these things, if I had been equipped with this type of holistic and comprehensive understanding of my own body, my own attachment styles, my own desires and needs and wants, and how to protect and respect all of those of mine and others, oh, I would have had a much different life. And I wanted to equip others with that. So started a business in 2022 and wondered if anybody would understand the longing of my heart. And here we are many years later, and it's thriving. And I now work with individuals and partnerships of all different sorts, both in Virginia, where I am locally, and all over the world.
I love when people turn their pain into their message. When you make your pain your message, and you're much better equipped at helping other people because you understand where they came from, or at least an inkling of an idea as to what their pain points are.
Agreed. I think there's something so magical in that Me Too, or I understand moment. And I have worked with coaches who have no experience like mine, but have still been so supportive. So I don't think that always has to be the case. But I do think that there's something special about saying, you also didn't know all of this before, but then you learned it and then you applied it. And now you, right? That we were saying off air too, that on the other side of the mountain of growth and learning and healing our trauma is this incredible sweetness. And I have so many clients who sit before me on Zoom or in my office and they say, I don't mean this unkindly, but because you were able to do this, I know I can do it too. Because you didn't come from just this bevy of understanding, but were able to learn and apply and grow and build new neural pathways, it means I could do it too. And I think there's something so beautiful in that.
It is beautiful. I think sex carries shame. It carries so much when, especially if you come from a religious background, where you're not allowed to look at the opposite sex. You're not allowed to have sex before marriage. You can't masturbate. You can't do all these things. And it's like you could get killed if you did it. Like there were some really bad punishments for doing these things in the Bible. How do you define empowered, authentic sex?
I would define it as a values-aligned expression of your body oriented towards pleasure. I think that every single one of us is motivated by different things, is driven by different things. I think every single one of us has different, unique, and specific needs, wants, and desires. And I believe that we each have a right and a responsibility to know what those are, so that we can clearly communicate in an empowered way to other human beings who might engage with us in a sexual manner, so that they can decide whether or not they are interested in playing with us in that way. I deeply believe that just because we have one preference and someone else has another doesn't make either of us wrong. It makes us unique and special. But again, that we each have a right and a responsibility to understand our sexual values, our sexual ethic, and then be able to have the tools and master the tools to communicate what it is that we need, want, and desire as we express ourselves sexually.
That's a beautiful thing if we could do that. And I think it's one of the hardest areas to express ourselves. So many people remain silent when they're not happy sexually. They don't guide somebody to what they want. And the other piece which you just mentioned, is there's a lot of judgment about people's needs. If you look on online dating sites, and I can say I was guilty of this too when I first started dating, like how can somebody be on a dating site and be married? How can they want an open relationship? How can you be poly solo? How can you be all these things that I don't even understand? I had to look up all these terms, right? So there's so many choices, but then that's their prerogative. Like if that works for them, you don't have to engage. And I feel that way about everything. I mean, I had just a conversation this morning with somebody new on an online dating site, and one of the first things he asked me was, do I ever come to his area? And I immediately disconnected from him. I'm like, first of all, we live a half an hour apart. And the first question you ask me is whether I ever come to you. That does not work for me. Now it might work for somebody else.
She's like, no.
Nope.
Nope. Nope.
So the old me would have been like, well, yeah, I would do that for the right person. And no, he's already showing me something that I don't want to see. I need somebody who's going to make an effort. I want to be with somebody who's going to be generous in all ways. That's an important value to me. So if you're starting by saying, I'm going to stay where I am, and if you're willing to come to me, maybe I'll entertain dating you. I don't think so.
But isn't it so interesting that as, human beings who long to be attached, we will so often adapt our behaviors to be chosen. And it takes so much work I like to think of it as a dry erase board, to try to kind of erase these old patterns of behavior, because I say they were safety seeking at some point in time. Usually they kept us safe. They kept us attached to someone. Yes, I'll come to you, right? I'll drive 30 minutes. Such a funny question.
Right. I used to.
Right? And
I used to.
It's just such necessary work, again, to get clear on. I love that you said one of my values is generosity, wherein then we can look and go, why is it this comment just rubs me the wrong way? Because most human beings, I love to say, can we notice, trust, and value that little inside of us? So many of us will notice, we'll feel the body-based response, we'll feel the somatic experience inside of our body, but then not many of us will trust it and then value it, because we haven't done exactly that. We don't have enough wisdom within ourselves to go, that doesn't align with my value. That's okay. Have a great life. Unmatched.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And I don't need to explain it to you either.
No.
But I love that you said notice, trust, and value, because many of us notice. We don't know how to name it. We may not trust it. It's something I know deep in my heart because I've been dating online on and off for many years, and I get it. I totally get what works for me and what doesn't. And I'm actually really proud of the fact that I've come to this part of my life where I don't second guess my intuition.
And I often think if we notice, trust, and value, not only are we honoring this beautiful intuition, which again, I do think we all have. I'd like to say that we were born inherently perfect sexual beings, and the world and cultural scripts and societal norms just heaped all these things on top of us, causing us to doubt our own intuition. But when we trust it, I deeply believe that you actually honored that other person too, because you didn't inauthentically pretend and perform. And how often do you and I both see in our professions how folks kind of got into something when they knew from the very beginning that something was off. And then what we find is that the other party feels so manipulated and lied to. And I learned the term altruistic deceit the other day, and I thought that is such a perfect term for that type of behavior. Well, because I don't want to hurt your feelings, I won't unmatch. Ew.
Exactly.
Let's assume the best in this person, and that he also was like, oh wow, I thank you for unmatching with me. Thank you for knowing in your soul that this was not right. I deeply believe that is actually honoring.
That's an interesting take. And I think that term altruistic deception is so common. I had a client this morning who keeps getting advice from people about how to get out of situations by making up a story so they won't hurt their feelings. And I'm like,
Yep.
how about we tell the truth in a kind way? How about we work on that and we don't make up a lie because we don't want to hurt their feelings? Wouldn't you feel better if you told the truth? And so most people don't know how to tell the truth in a kind way or in a way that makes them not feel bad. So, that's part of the practice.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like to tell my clients all the time that, again, it's a safety-seeking behavior. And most often, you and I were talking about this often off air as well, the behavioral patterns that we have chosen were to keep us safe, and they are usually patterns that we find ourselves repeating over and over and over and over and over again. Let me just tell this sweet little white lie to stay out of the situation instead of truth that perhaps might bring some discomfort to this relational dynamic. And I tell my clients often that what I love to do is encourage us to be truth tellers and then collect the data inside of that uncomfy place. Is the person across from you able to handle their own emotional response? Are they able to sit with their own discomfort, communicate back to you how your truth made them feel? How do you feel telling the truth? Because so many of us have been raised on altruistic deceit. And it's so beautiful to learn to be uncomfy in this idea that we can have different values and feelings and beliefs and then be more healthy relational creatures. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, and based on what you said before about your ex-husband and what your counselor said to set some boundaries and see how he responds, that's what we need to do. We need to see how people respond to our boundaries. When we say no, when we say, I'm not comfortable with that, are they pushing? Are they yelling at us and making us wrong? That tells you a lot about a person. But if you never bring that stuff up, you won't know how you disagree. You won't know the qualities of the other person and how they do with conflict. And that's one of the most important aspects of a relationship is conflict resolution. It's how do we stay in and not blame and shame and get defensive and shut down and do all the things that most people do.
All of the different ways that all of us have seen relationships modeled, right? I would argue that so many of us have maybe less than 5 healthy relationships in our spheres that we grew up witnessing and seeing. Yes, you're exactly right. Inside of my decade-long marriage to my now happily gay ex-husband, I enabled so much. And that was a lot of the work I had to do in my season before I stumbled into and found my precious now second husband, was a lot of work on codependency in the way that I had so become accustomed to love feeling like being needed, of enabling this cycle and this pattern inside of a relationship of keeping him comfy so that everything stayed good, that we stayed married, that the relationship was most important. And oh goodness, yeah, all it took is 1 week of boundaries to see, oh wow, this is not good.
Yeah, the codependency that most of us have, where we were raised to be nice, we were raised to be kind above all. And that leads to inauthenticity when you're being kind at the cost of losing yourself. And so many of us do that. That was a big part of my work as well. Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Amazon Music Unlimited. You can listen to over 70 million songs and thousands of playlists and stations. Plus, you can now stream your favorite podcasts like Last First Date Radio. You can listen to any song, anytime, anywhere, on any of your devices. Get Amazon Music Unlimited for free for 30 days. Just head on over to getamazonmusic.com/lastfirstdate to learn more and claim this offer. How do people even begin to even know themselves and know what constitutes an authentic sex life for themselves?
In my work, we always start with understanding the origin story, with understanding where the sexual beliefs that we have now even were planted. When were they planted? Who planted them? Where did they come from? So we always go way back to the beginning. You and I were talking about this too. And we look at from birth till now all of the different instances, all of the positive reinforcements of your romantic and sexual behaviors, all of the negative ones. And we start to consider the different beliefs about sex, relationships, attachments, bodies, the bodies of others, the roles that we play inside of relationship. What's a woman's job? What's a man's job? What's your way that you want to be seen, right, as a result of these things? So we start with those origin stories and we locate the explicit, which I like to say are little weeds in our sexual gardens that we've plucked out long ago. And we tap ourselves on the shoulder because growth mindset. We all are capable of growth. And I want my clients to know that first, that all of us, even unbeknownst to us, have been growing. And we can continue to. And then we label and recognize the latent sex negative and relationship negative beliefs that almost it's like you go to pull a dandelion from a garden and those roots get stuck underneath. Those are those latent ones. So you don't really believe them anymore. But boy, oh boy, do they show up in your online dating world. Boy, oh boy, do they show up in your friendships. And then we have body-based sex negative beliefs that feel like, I always equate them to soil blight. They feel like sick soil. And the reason we label those is they need a lot of love and nurturance and sunshine and time to heal. And we deserve that because when young people have been indoctrinated, such as I have with religious beliefs, those seep deep into the body. So once we have recognized old beliefs that we no longer want to ascribe to, then we can start introducing new ideas, new ways of thoughts. So we do that through sensation exercises, through games with partners, through self-exploration exercises, noticing what it is that the body wants through, for my clients who are in seasons of casually dating or looking for a partner, for going on dates and noticing their somatic experiences inside of that date and then bringing that intel home to a journaling practice or into a session and really paying attention to how does my body feel in this space. A lot of my clients, as I'm sure you have witnessed too, had incomplete or inaccurate sexuality education as a basis. And so we do a lot of updating on things like sexually transmitted infections, on things like how we can enjoy ourselves inside of our bodies. For my clients with vulvas and vaginas and clitorises, we do a lot of basic education on anatomy so that we can truly understand desire and arousal. I think, and I'm sure your audience is familiar with this idea that we're all the same and we're all turned on by the same things and we all go into a sexual encounter in the same way is silliness. We're all so unique and different. So discovering that through introducing all of the ways that any of us could come into a sexy experience and how we could celebrate each of those. And then I love doing work with my clients on their erotic imaginations. I find that this is the intelligence that we're all missing. Esther Perel likes to say, it's not a crisis of desire, it's a crisis of imagination. And so I love to take my clients into the dark recesses of their imagination and bring online the things that have been inherently their core erotic themes since they were really little, because this becomes the foundation of understanding what it is that they love, whether it is in a fantasy realm or in a reality realm, and being able to communicate these things, sexual preferences, the types of sexy talk they love, the types of romantic gestures they are interested in, becomes truly empowered, authentic ways of living.
I can just feel the process in my body as you're talking. Like, no, we all have our origin stories. I don't think many of us even really understand the connection between our past and our present. And we have beliefs. I've had just the other day, I had a woman in my coaching group say, all men are controlling, right? And I was like, what? She really believed it. She was like, they're not. And I said, that might have been your experience,
Yes.
but that is not true. And I said, your homework is to look for men who are not.
Yes.
And I said, it could be the cashier. It could be anybody, but start to develop that evidence that your beliefs are based on an old story.
Yes.
We can change the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
We really can change the narrative of how we grew up and what we believed.
Well, and isn't it interesting, and I'm sure you find this all the time, that when that is our guiding belief, that is what we begin to seek out subconsciously. It is what we begin to find ourselves in. I remember as I was first learning this in my season after my divorce, I read a book, I think it's called No Happy Endings by Nora McHenry or McIvory. And it's not meant to be a self-help book. It's just a memoir of a really tragic life that she went through. And in it, she describes this process that she just did for herself of writing want ads for a future partner. And I started doing this as like a playful little exercise, right? Eligible divorcee, seeks dashing eligible man. And I started filling in the blanks of all the things I truly wanted, right? In this dream world, in this silly fantasy that I was concocting. I think my daughter was 8 years old, 9 years old at the time. And I live in this nowhere town in the middle of Virginia. And the tendency would be to think, who in the world is going to want to partner up with a single mother in nowhere, Virginia? What in the world? There's no hope for me. That would be a very logical way to sit in for a little bit. But what I found was that was not helping me find any type of partner. Instead, what was so fun is to sit at my local little hole in the wall pizza joint and with my journal and write these silly want ads. And what is so fascinating, and I love the prompt that you gave to the person in your coaching group, is that then we start to see that, right? Isn't it Mr. Rogers who says, look for the helpers? When we start to look for that, I promise everyone, we do see it. And it's really beautiful. And so when I flew across the country to San Diego for a work conference, for my maternal health work, I put that zip code in the apps, in the online dating apps. And I thought, what's the worst thing that can happen? I go on a date that's miserable and uncomfy, and I never have to see the man again. Like, this is a perfect opportunity, Lauren, to see if there's anything else out there. Right. So I go in the apps, I put in the zip code for the area in San Diego that I'm traveling to. The algorithm goes wild. I don't know how. It spread the radius out way too far. And I'm scrolling through, as we do on the dating apps, and I saw this one gentleman, and my whole body had a little somatic response. And I just kind of tilted my head, and I kind of liked his photo. I liked his profile, nothing more, but it was almost like a bookmark. Come back to that later. And then a few days later, I got a message from this young man in Los Angeles County. And he said, Lauren, love, you're in Virginia. State your business. And so I responded, hey, I'll be in San Diego for work. I like to keep my options open. Again, just playing with this type of want ad of, I can dream. I get to dream. I get to see. I get to play. So speed forward a little bit. We scheduled a date. We talked on the phone. It was like I was talking to a best friend from forever ago. It was really odd of how much I could hear some of these things that I'd written down. Fly out to San Diego. He got to the hotel way too early. I see him in the lobby as I'm checking in. And I don't know about anyone else who's in your audience, but when I travel, I wear all my thickest things. So I had on my biggest sweater, my chunkiest shoes, my thickest jeans. I had no makeup on because I was planning on going on this date later. But there in the hotel lobby is this man from the dating apps. And I texted him and said, is that you? And finished my checking in and turned around. And there he was standing. And Sandy, my entire body went, there he is. It was the wildest thing in the world. And throughout the date, I kept asking kind of silly, playful questions, knowing my values, knowing my little want ads. And it was as if in my brain, all these little things were checking off because they were things I had set as an intention. And yeah, long story short, that certain gentleman flew across the country, moved to Virginia, and we are now married for several years. So,
wow. What a story.
Wild.
Amazing. Well, what I love many things about the story. First of all, I think a lot of people get very stuck
Yes.
on location.
Yes.
And that's one of the most common things that people say is my town is the reason why I'm single.
Hmm.
And you could be in New York City and it's too much choice. And you're in some country town and it's too little choice. And we have choices. We have dating apps that can connect us with people all over the world. We can travel. They can travel. But it is really important to add the part where you knew yourself and you knew what you wanted and you had a felt sense.
Yes.
And I think what people focus on so often is the wrong things. They focus
Yes.
on the education level and, does he own a house? And
Hmm.
what's significant about those things? Like, do you want to have interesting conversations? Well, then you have to find out, is he a person with a growth mindset? Does he
Exactly.
constantly learn, right? It's not, does he have a PhD? That doesn't tell you anything. Like, I'm not impressed by the MD PhD. I'm impressed by somebody's desire to learn,
Yes.
somebody's desire, curiosity is sexy.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
So,
literally, I have this, I have a sticker on my water bottle of my favorite quote, which is curiosity is the key to intimacy. He is the best question asker, which leads to that curious piece. Yes. And I love to say curiosity is the key to intimacy. And his questions from the moment we talked on the phone, from the moment we were there in the lobby, right, made me feel seen as a human, but then also gave me permission to then question ask back to him.
I think people don't value that enough. And it's the ability to stay present with somebody, ask follow-up questions, really get curious about the person. There are so many people who go on dates and they think the point is that we have to sell ourselves. I've had people do that in a text, let me tell you all the things about me. I'm like, okay, are we selling something here? Like,
Like a
this is like a
house.
marketing ad.
It's like colonial design met with, yes.
Yes, buy me, please, pick me. People don't realize that it's not about being the best looking person. It's not about being the smartest, the richest. It's really about being present, being open, knowing yourself, not carrying with you the resentment of your past. I mean, it's just so many more important things than the things that we can't control.
And it's again so interesting of where we learned these lessons, where we learned this is how to attract a mate. It's like, where does that storyline start? Where is it movies? Is it media? It's funny and beautiful. I encourage anyone to do that work. Where is this belief coming from that this is how it's done? Because
Yeah,
most likely it's outdated. And most likely there's a free YouTube video somewhere that could teach you a better way to do it. I tease all the time that never has there ever been more accessible, incredible content online for learning how to show up more authentically as a dating human being. And yet it is funny how many people haven't done the work. And yeah,
yeah,
it used to be you had to pay for counseling, you had to pay for this book, you had to buy this program. Now, not so much. Now we can
yeah,
just pop on YouTube. It's amazing.
yeah. You can get a full education, but you have to be motivated. I
Yes.
remember when my son had a breakup and he found a dating coach online that he related to. And he learned how to be more confident as a man. He learned how to communicate better. He learned so many things that I then took some of the teachings that he learned and taught them to some of my male clients who were struggling with their sexuality, with how they were coming across to women. People really don't realize the things that they do and say and how they are and how it affects other people. And it's learned behaviors like the people pleasing and all of those behaviors that are actually you not showing up as yourself. And so becoming more confident and learning how to convey who you are as a human. You say sex is not everything, it's just a part of everything. Can you explain what that means?
Yes, it's my favorite. I don't know if I heard it or if I just made it up, but I think I say it 15 times a day. When I went back to school and began to learn all these sexuality things, I just kept thinking, this could heal the world. This could heal the world. And then I stumbled into a statement from the World Health Organization that says that sexual health is fundamental to the well-being of individuals, families, and communities. And I thought, I wonder why. And now, in my work, I know why. Because when we know ourselves and who we are as sexual beings, our likes, our preferences, our needs, wants, and desires, and we can notice them, trust them, and value them, and communicate them, and respect and protect our own sexual values and our own sexuality, and then respect and protect everyone else around us, I begin to see this social contagion thing. I begin to see the ripples go out everywhere. So that's like the positive aspect. Then on the flip side, I have so many individuals who come to me and want more sex, better sex, this kind of sex. And there's so much work to do before we get to the sex, that there is everything that leads to the sex that we have. So I see it as a both. Sex is the origin to living a fulfilled life in every way, but also the sex that we have is a direct result of the work we have done on ourselves, the ways in which we can just exist in these human meat suits that we're in the presence of other people. And so I say that sex is not everything, it's just a part of everything, because you could live a happy, lovely, juicy life and not be having the sex you want, and that could be sad. But you also could be having great, hot sex and have a miserable life. So I see that as a both and type of story.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. And I think that you talked about somatic work, and I think that it's so essential, whether you connect sex to somatic work or you just think about how the body has so much knowledge and wisdom, and that we are raised to value our intellect and not our bodies. And our bodies hold everything. And I think they hold trauma and they hold wisdom. And I think somatic work is so important for you to be able to stand in front of your now husband and sense that he was the man for you. Like just have a bodily sense. So many of us wouldn't trust that, or we wouldn't even feel it. I've talked to clients like, what's going on in your body? And they don't even know how to start. So for somebody who really is so disconnected, can you share an exercise or some way that people can begin to tap into their body wisdom?
So one of my favorites, and we can do this right now, is a 5 senses exercise wherein, wherever you are, and if you're driving in the car listening to this episode, please do not close your eyes. But I want you to notice one thing right now that you can taste. Some of my clients will say, well, wait, I haven't eaten anything for hours. Just take a minute. Take a minute to notice your own saliva. Maybe you're outside or in a restaurant or walking through a supermarket and you can taste something that's in the air. Notice that taste and then notice something about it that brings you pleasure. Now, I want you to notice one thing, just one thing that you can hear. So often, there are so many sounds coming at us from every different direction, and yet it can be fascinating to still our bodies and notice just one thing we can hear. So if you're in the car and you're listening to this conversation, are you also hearing the outdoor sounds, the sound of your air conditioning, the sound of your own foot on the gas pedal? Tune into just one sound that brings you pleasure. Now, I want you to notice something you can smell, same activity, just one thing. What about it brings you pleasure? Now, I want you to notice one thing you can feel. I love to do this just in my own body. And often I think about the different fabrics that are on my body right here and now. I can feel the threads in my jeans, like the literal woven pattern. Notice one thing that you feel that brings you pleasure. And last but not least, one thing you can see. There's so much constantly coming at us visually. We're such visual creatures, and that's so beautiful. But notice one thing right now that brings you pleasure to see. Now just kind of take notice of those and sink into your own body. The reason that I teach this exercise is I think that so often we go about this life thinking about all of the things that do not bring us pleasure. The frustrations of living in a small town when trying to date again. The lack of available suitors in our spaces. The lack of available women. The lack of stimulating conversation. We spend a lot of time focusing on the negative attributes. And what I have found is that when we can start to find a peace in our body, in our own sensory experience, then we begin to be able to take that with us anywhere. And then also notice when we are in the presence of individuals who do not broaden or stimulate or protect that sense of somatic peace in our body, of our nervous system, of those beautiful senses. This exercise is one that I do with my now 14-year-old daughter too. We'll take a walk just around the neighborhood and we'll toss it back and forth. So those of you who might be a parent, it's really fun. You say, name one thing you can hear. And it's amazing to watch a elementary school child, a middle school, high school, grown adult child name something so different than what you're hearing. And what then we can start to do is then she'll toss back to me a different sense. Name one thing you can smell. And then we giggle at the differences inside our bodies. And then we're getting to both notice her somatic body and my somatic body as differences and celebrate that neither is better or worse. They're just different together. Oh, yeah, that's an exercise that I love.
Yeah, that's great. It reminds me of a mindfulness exercise where I would go outside and listen to like 5 sounds going from far to near, and then like ending with my breath, because if you're closing your eyes, that's usually the last sound that you're tuning into. Or the same with vision, like blurring your vision and then seeing something sharper. Like there's so many ways we can tune into our senses. I also had learned an exercise where you just rub 2 fingers together to ground yourself. And so when you were doing the something you can touch, I immediately went to my 2 fingers and felt the sensation of warmth and the skin to skin, which we don't usually do during the day when we're working and so focused on production and being efficient. And yeah. So I think it's such an important reminder, and I love attaching pleasure to it because I think we're so detached from that. And we are so focused on the negativity and what's missing instead of what actually is there and present. And yeah, I love that. Lauren, what are your final words of advice for anyone who wants to go on their last first date?
Know yourself. Become the first and last and best lover to yourself. And then introduce that person to your last first date.
I love that. Very unique perspective that I have not heard yet. So I've been asking this question for 12 years. Yeah, and introduce that person. I think that when you don't know yourself, who are you bringing to dates, right?
I think it is the most precious work that we can do, because for those of us who have walked through a divorce, I don't know about you, but I was still there at the end. I still had myself, and I can never lose her again. Never.
Yeah.
And it is such important, beautiful work. It's no one else's job to know me as deeply as I know me. And I think that is the greatest gift that we can bring to anyone we go on a last first date with.
Speaking of gifts, you have a free 15-minute consultation. Can you share the link to that with our audience?
Yes, I would love, if anything that I have said today resonates with you, for you to visit sexedforyou.com/free consult. And I would love to sit with you and hear your story and hear what you're looking for and hungry for in this next season of your life. And I can share with you how I work with my clients, and we can see if we'd be a good fit going forward. But I would love to hold space for your story and cheer for you in any way that I can.
I love it. And Lauren, you just have such a warm and playful presence. There's something so open and loving, and I can feel the work that you've done because you just seem to embody this loving, warm, open person.
Thank you, Stacey. It brings tears to my eyes. This story of mine is such a pain to purpose story, and this work is my passion and my greatest joy. So thank you for those words.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody, for listening today. If you love our show, please share it with others. Please rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts. I think you can also rate us and review us on Spotify now. I'm not sure how.
You can. I did it this morning.
Thank you. Yeah. I have to go look that up because there's probably more reviews that I haven't seen. And as always, here's to your last first date. If you are ready to get unstuck, gain new tools, become more empowered, and finally find your last first date, I'd love to talk to you. Fill out an application to be considered for a complimentary half-hour love breakthrough session at lastfirstdate.com/application.